Go.
Yo, how you doing, folks? Welcome to episode 7 of the Simpa Life Podcast. I'm joined as always by my co-host,
Cohort.
co-host, whatever you want to call it, Mr. Maca MC. How are you doing, brother?
Not too bad. Thank you very much for asking. I hope everybody is as well as can be. Whatever time of day it is before Simpa interjects and tries to embarrass us. No, I'm joking. I just wanted to say, obviously, jump in and go. We were supposed to actually have a guest for this episode, but we had a massive audio issue where we ended up with 2 hours of pretty much empty video. Well, no, it was clear video, but it was empty audio. It was just my mic for some reason, even though all the levels were coming up in OBS and everything, and I was adjusting them as I was going. Afterwards, we stopped it, exported it, and it was just blank. It was just basically me doing really, really quiet and fiddling with stuff, so it's not the best for an entire episode. So what we're going to do is we're going to have that guest on again. I'll leave Simpa tell you who the guest was, and I'm sure he wants to share our apologies.
Yeah, to echo exactly what Maca has just said, we did record the episode, but unfortunately, as it's come to rendering it, the audio of myself and our guest was actually Fiona Gilbertson from Recovering Justice, a drug reform movement that's predominantly led by former addicts and people sort of in recovery and people with lived experience. And so it's very much a shame because we were able to cover a great diversity of topics and subject matter that I don't think we've really touched on before, sort of sex work, the dangers of sort of HIV, the association, of HIV and intravenous drug use. We spoke quite intimately of the consequences of prohibition on the individual consumer. So it was very much a shame to have not been able to bring that to you today. We are actually sat now, the day before you're listening to this, throwing this together for you fine folk. We wanted to just obviously continue to put something out this week. Normally we would have stacked guests, but given the nature of a few of the people that we've been trying to book so far, that means we've lost recording session evenings. Obviously Maca works full time. I'm dedicated to other things in my life as well. So it's quite hard for us to find this time. So we do hope that you continue to stick around and listen to this chat.
Two of us pull topics out of our arses and try and make them entertaining, I suppose. We're joined with we do have actually an extra special guest here, as you can see. But I'll predict that she'll announce her entrance to the episode at some point. So if you're listening to this and you can't see it, there's a cat on the chair beside me. But we'll let her dictate her involvement in this.
Same with Neo. It's interesting. I can't really mention the project, but I had to submit for the first time in my life a few minute long video to a producer of a series that asked for me, and I took 3 or 4 recordings, and I think on the second recording my cat comes running in across the top of the couch, sprints up, tries to get onto my lap and fails, so there's a loud dump as he hits the floor, and then you just see him scurry and just run away out the back and out round.
Comedy gold, personalization as I call it. Why would you want to it's like that video that's now being used as a sort of a commercial, a personal promotion. Remember the guy that was on the news and his kid came in and I think it was his wife burst in afterwards and the kid was like kind of a thing. It was amazing. It was wonderful to view. But I think there's now sort of parody versions of that, purposefully parodied versions of it, which sort of detracts a small bit from it. It's not something to complain about by any means, but can't remember what my point was.
Well, it's interesting actually, that video when you talk about, I think it was BBC News.
It was, yeah.
And I remember there being a fervor in the media about it because he was sort of a white middle class gentleman, quite well spoken, and apologies, but I can't remember the nationality of his wife, but people made the straight assumption that was the cleaner or the maid or somebody like this, and there was a big thing back and forth, I remember, around when that video came out, of a backlash of people. And again, it just shows the undertone of racism that still pervades in the 21st century.
It's still embedded in our subliminal fucking thought processes, which is slightly concerning, I suppose. But yeah, on a lighter note, I guess. Yeah, I love that kind of sort of personalization and stuff like that, especially when it's embraced with positivity and stuff like that, you know, that kind of way. So I'm glad people were able to see the lighter side of that, even, you know, post. It required another interview, I think, with the entire family to actually explain,
clarify.
Yeah.
Which is that they felt the need to.
I know, and it's that's depressing, to say the least. But we still have this sort of auto-associative thing that sort of embedded in our societies, and I mean we have that. We've got examples of that as we're sort of. Well, I was growing up as well. I mean, when I was growing up, I was listening to an awful lot of rap music at the time. I guess late 90s, maybe. I think it was after Tupac died. Yeah, it would have been. Because I wasn't aware of Tupac before he had sort of died. Really bad way of putting that at that point. But at the time, like the word faggot was very prevalent, very, very fucking prevalent in hip hop culture and society and stuff like that. And I used to, even like Eminem used to have an awful lot of songs with the use of that word. And I remember that being a sort of a very acceptable thing in the school and stuff like that, you know, that kind of way. And it was always the go-to thing to sort of attack someone else's sense of self. It was to accuse them of being homosexual in the most crass way forward, and that was deemed an acceptable thing. It wasn't, you know what I mean? It was obviously hurting people, of course it was. But at the time, it was like, you know what I mean? You wouldn't think twice about using it, and you know, I would actually freely admit to actually having been caught up in that, having sort of hung around with groups of lads predominantly all struggling for some sort of definition of self, and an awful lot of that came in an adversarial type thing, where machismo kind of a thing, you know, and it was like, oh, don't touch me, what are you, gay or something like that, you know, that kind of way. And I remember fucking having to do it, not having to do it, fucking hell, bad word, you know, using that sort of language, and then obviously growing up and maturing and looking back at that sort of use. I mean, I'm absolutely 100% ashamed of it. I mean, there is no justification in what I'm telling you. You know, that kind of way. I'm not trying to explain my use of the words or anything like that. You know what I mean? Just because it was an accepted or seemingly accepted thing to say within society at that point in time, it by no means gets any sort of justification, you know, that kind of way. And I look back at that now and I kind of go, bloody hell, like there's not a hope I would ever even use that word ever, like, you know, that kind of way. And that's where I stand now, you know, that kind of way. Even when I go back and I listen to some Eminem songs, I get this sort of I don't know, conflict of emotions, because at the start I'm just listening and I'm going, oh yeah, I remember that song, and there's a sort of relatability towards it, and then I hear that word being used and it kind of goes, oh for fuck's sake, that kind of ruined that, didn't it, you know, that kind of way. And then I skip it or something like that, you know, that kind of way. So
I think it's good though, that then shows that even though we find certain things that are acceptable in society, we behave in certain ways. I think this is a very important subject and something we've sort of briefly discussed previously privately. And I think it is a great subject matter for the podcast, because as men of a certain era, it was almost deemed to be the worst thing was to be gay. So it started almost as a hazing and a teasing, and on a subconscious level, then on a sort of low level, I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but subliminal. Like a subliminal sort of way. Yeah, it's a really offensive and it's really aggressive, but nobody really quite understood what it meant in that sense. You knew the dynamics, you know what homosexual sex looks like and is, etc. But there was just so much misunderstanding and so much lack of information and knowledge and so much stigma and prejudice against the culture and the community. I mean, I Googled a second ago, it wasn't actually until 1967 that homosexuality was legalized in the UK. So you can then see how that's still only 1 or 2 generations down from the people who lived under a time when they, say, chemically castrated. What the hell's the guy's name who worked on the Enigma machine? Alan Turing, a mathematician from the UK. And because of his homosexuality, after he basically helped win the war for the UK, they chemically castrated him because of his homosexuality. So you can see why then that still lingers. We were very much, whether we like it or not, a Christian country. And although there are steps being made apparently within modern Catholicism to try and accept alternative love models, for lack of a better way of wording it, but the evolution is just not happening fast enough. So the same thing that brought us to this conversation about if that pervasive racism still being there, I still think that this discrimination in terms of people's sexual orientation or gender or their expression of their individuality, I think is still going to be contentious for decades to come, unfortunately, because we still have this imperative within capitalism to define, divide, and create polarized communities.
Yeah, and stagnate within that. If they have some sort of acceptable model that's working, then what they do is they sink the claws in and maintain its stagnation, and conceptually, I guess. But yeah, I mean, even from a religious side of things, just picking up on what you're saying there as well, historically, you can imagine like growing up a couple of generations before me, and being homosexual, and for, you know what I mean, having no sort of sense of support coming from fucking anywhere, really, if you think about it. I mean, being terrified to tell your parents and stuff like that because of what it carried. Even from a religious perspective, like, the Bible says this, the whatever interpretation that was being. I was
gonna say, it's the interpretation of the Bible.
Yeah,
according to many scholars, there is no reference to anything anti-homosexual in the original text of the Bible.
I mean, having a society essentially in fear, and being, that kind of way from a religious point of view, historically and systemically, it's sort of driven home, and it becomes, and an awful lot of the accepted use would be to demean someone that wasn't necessarily homosexual themselves, that kind of way. So it was quite trivial in its sense. So you can imagine not being able to have any sort of spiritual reprieve, not being able to have any sort of family-led empathy because of the societal pressures as well. But if you were closeted, I guess would be the correct term at that point. I don't know if that's, but in fear of essentially coming out in that sort of environment, and you see it being used in a sort of very trivial manner in general, you're just backed into a corner. Do you know that kind of way? It's just, I can't imagine what it must have felt like to feel that way. And I feel that way about anybody that's fighting for any sort of gender identification as well. Do you know that kind of way? I feel it. I feel your pain. I really, really, really do. It depresses me that we're still sort of repeating the same sort of battles over and over. Do you know what I mean?
Very, very much so. There's a point that I raised to somebody. I don't know what we're recording. I've recorded a lot of things recently, and said that all fights are the same fight. It's a fight for our acceptability of our individuality. It's a fight for our right to be different to others, to be weird, to be uninterpretable. As long as we're not causing any harm, there is no reason why anybody can't act in any which way. Yeah. It's not any of my business if you understand my life choices or not. And if you're offended by them, frankly, that's your fucking fault. Yeah. You're taking offense to me. I'm not going out of my way to try and offend you. And if it does, you should then sit down and have some goddamn questions with yourself. And I think, we saw this, obviously, you saw with the, with what was supposed to be racial equality through the 60s. Do you know what I mean? And now we're slowly getting there. Then we've had gender equality, female equality is what we're supposed to be seeing with modern feminism. But then each of these compartmentalized battles are still missing the point.
Yeah.
All of these are marginalized groups. These are people that are deemed by the apparatus, the state, the global governance, whatever you want to call it, the modern infrastructure we live on, is deemed that these are not acceptable.
Yeah.
So rather than us all in one individual fight trying to do, we just need to stand up for all of us. There is no difference. Me fighting to be accepted as a drug consumer is the same as somebody fighting for their right to be non-binary, their right to be accepted as trans. It's the same as somebody fighting for wealth inequality. It's somebody the same as fighting for environmentalism. They're all the same goddamn fights. We're all facing the same enemy. It is this warped, psychotic ideology of modern neoliberalistic capitalism that just seeks to further, as I say, divide us and keep us segregated and disillusioned just enough that we will keep spending our money.
And allowing some sort of level of progression, or seeming progression, should I say. So
controlled opposition.
Yeah, so we move from one fight to the next, even though it's the same fight. But it seems like there's something happening because we sorted something beforehand, so it's fine. It's fine. That's fine.
Small accepted concessions are made. We spoke, I think, or me and Tyler Green, obviously guys, you can check out the Tyler Green podcast, episode 2, I believe it is. We spoke of the idea of then we're too kind of pally-pally with the opposition of this. It's like become almost like a pageantry. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. In the sense that we go, instead of being radical, instead of us being radical, we're asking for these little concessions. We're going and negotiating and taking these tiny little incremental steps while they still continue to destroy lives every day. They still continue to perpetuate the same stigma and the same cultural persecution that each individual then still feels entitled to inflict, in the same way that we as children almost felt that it was just laugh. So when two of your mates touch accidentally, gay.
Dude, I used to have that. I used to recoil when one of my friends touched me like that.
Same.
And I'm going, what the absolute fuck were you thinking? How fucking insecure was I? No, seriously, think about it. Yeah. It was my friend. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, oh my sweet fucking Christ. I actually cringe now when I think about it. Yeah. I'm glad that do you know what I mean? I don't fucking stagnate and fucking I try my best to fucking learn and fucking grow at every point that I can, and I've got so much to do as well. Do you know that kind of way? So by no means am I fucking perfect. What kind of stupid shit does that say anyway? But I don't know. It's I find it frustrating that, again, just to repeat what we were saying earlier, is that we have a facade of progression. Do you know that kind of way? I don't know. Yeah. I don't know.
No, I think that's a good way of describing it, because there's a co-option of progression. So let's look back to the right for queer and gay identity. Okay, so that's Stonewall in America, right? Now in the UK, as a progression to that, we ended up with Pride flag, with the Pride parades and everything else, to now the police vans in the UK. Bear in mind, the same ones who the coppers would literally be like, oh, it's a weekend, lads, got to go smash some queer skulls, beat up the fag sort of style. They've now got a plastered rainbow flag, on the side of their fucking vans and shit. It's the same is going to happen to us with cannabis if we're not too careful. And it's like, no, you are the oppressor, and you are still oppressing us, just in different marginalized ways. You may accept our narrative, but you still then find really nuanced ways to attack us. You still find ways to keep us from living true, free lives. You're saying that there's equality. All right, then why is there an impediment for gays adopting? You know what I mean? Yeah. Why there's so many other barriers to what would be, I suppose, deemed a normal lifestyle. I mean that in the sense of the ability for you to choose if you wanted to start a family, get a mortgage, get a house, do all the other stuff and be protected. You know what I mean? Yeah. Some of the stuff with civil unions still doesn't give the same protections under tax rules and inheritance rules that a marriage does.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's still ways that they are still screwing over people who are choosing to express their forms of love. And that is inherently wrong. So although they can stand at the pulpit and say that, oh, this month is trans rights, or this week is trans rights week, or whatever, yet the policies that they stand to sign every goddamn day, the things they debate on, are still making life miserable for these marginalized groups.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't know if it's cognitive dissonance or bias in their mind, whether they actually think themselves as these sort of narcissistic champions of, well, I'm helping them because no one can help them, and not actually understanding a goddamn thing that they're doing. Do you know what I mean?
Putting a plaster over the actual issue. Do you know, that kind of way? It feels that way sometimes, especially. Well, one of the biggest things that I worry about, though, is the use of disinformation, but particular. How do I say it? I don't know how to say it, really, to be quite honest, but it's like, if you can if you can sway a point in a certain way that keeps people so fucking irate that they argue against you instead of the point, you're sort of driving home this non-middle ground participation. Do you know what I mean?
Polarized debate.
Yeah, polarized debate, but it's like, what we're seeing now is actual agents, I guess would be the word, people that are actually going out of their fucking way to actually be in that middle, or believe something falsely, even, to really drive home separation and keep people fucking boxed off, you know.
Well, an interesting thought process, because obviously this might get slightly conspiratorial for the next few moments, guys. The term conspiracy theorist was created after the Kennedy assassination. And since then, there have been so many unbelievable backroom sort of targeted programs run by various secret agencies around the world. A lot of these have become public under the 30-year rule. And as a consequence of this 30-year rule, we're not going to see what they've done now for the next till 30 years from now. But I guarantee you, when it happens, there will be whole departments of people that perpetuate flat earth. There'll be whole departments of people that perpetuate, like, you know, the extreme side of anti-vaccination. And just of any of these polarizing debates there, I guarantee you there will be departments and government agents that have accounts on these social media platforms that entirely just spread disinformation.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like the most effective tool. And when you have certain academics talking in with lengthy aesthetic language, similar to yourself, Simpa, putting ideas into people's heads there, and then tilting and twisting the fucking context right at the end to drive home a problem that isn't there, is extremely problematic. And I don't have an answer to it. I don't have an answer. It's so complex in its nature. Now, what the fuck do you do? Because if you develop something that's equally complex, then we're just diving into the fucking rabbit hole of, you know, fucking countering each other. And yeah, I think that's actually a play in itself, because you're just locked in then, aren't you? You know?
Yeah, exactly that. It's divide and conquer. So the more the internet is is worried about fighting over the color of a dress, we're not then talking about 10 million people starving in Yemen. You know, we're not then talking about late stage capitalism, the potential next bubble pop, which will make 2008 look like a fucking dip in the ocean. You know what I mean?
Indeed.
There's the environmental ecological collapses of various ecosystems around the world. There are so many other things that we should and need to be discussing, and either unintentionally through a byproduct of the algorithms, or intentionally through manipulation of the algorithms on social media, we end up finding ourselves in these pointless arguments and debates, or we end up discussing the nuances of shit that really is irrelevant and trivial compared to the things that we should be discussing. And then we get lost in this idea of going, well, if this is the media and the world that is presented to me, this is all the world is. And you forget that there's so fucking much more. And then when you meet somebody who doesn't share your experience and your thing, all you can be is angry at them, because this is the world. This is the only world. If you don't see the world, then what are you living in? Do you know what I mean? And people forget that we generate and create and self-perpetuate our own reality every day through the narratives we tell ourselves. With our ego, our voice in our head, it generates who we are. It tells us how we interact with the world. It tells us how to engage with everything. And so that makes every experience individual. And we've lost that nuance in the 21st century debate. because we, as you say, we just end up attacking each other, and it ends up a state of just tribalism. It's you're attacking my tribe, so I hate everything about you.
Yeah. Okay. So there's an awful lot of facets to this, though. All right. And it can be argued that the immediacy of access into fucking hell. I'll try that again. The immediacy that you get from like a phone in terms of access to information is like it's incomparable to anything that we would have experienced growing up as kids. You know, that kind of way. You had a question, you can't just fucking take something out of your pocket and open it up and type it in and get a fucking most of the time a fucking legitimate answer off the fucking bat within seconds. And so like an awful lot of sort of self-reflection, maybe some sort of ego maintenance or something like that was I don't know, that was helped along with lengthy stewing processes because of your access to information. Do you know what I mean? Even if you had like an Encyclopedia Britannica or something like that, it took fucking ages to get where you wanted to get to and digest all that information. So you had percolation. Do you know that kind of way? Yeah. And even in arguments and stuff like that. So non-social media based arguments, but you know, if you're having family based arguments or whatever, obviously that transfers over because if say me and you have an argument, we're in the same house, yeah, and I go, well, fuck you, Simpa, fuck you, you're only an old prick, and we have it, and then instead of actually separating, I go into my room, you go into your room, and we fucking decompress and think it over and whatever, it's like boom, screen. Do you know what I mean? I've left it, it's gone. And I'm wondering, is that just going to be very detrimental to, over the long run in society? It's going to be interesting to see, because obviously COVID threw a spanner in that works, really.
Yeah. There's an interesting point there about sort of the relationship thing, and it's interesting in what you say about percolating on ideas and concepts. So there's an idea.
You don't have to think about it. So Simpa, he's still only a dickhead. I don't really want to think about that anymore. Bang, I'm on the fucking BBC.
Hey, you can have billions of other thoughts blasted into your mind immediately. Yeah, exactly. So in one way, as a tool of escapism, I suppose it is beneficial. But if it is actually then taking away our agency and disenfranchising us from the self, as it were, in terms of you then going, instead of sitting with this and going, oh God, why did that happen? I need to think about this and go, what was the argument about? Rather than that, you just go, fuck it, move. And so that then didn't happen. And then we live, I think we discussed this in a previous podcast, in a permanent sense of presence. Because of how fast everything moves and it's constantly going. Yeah. There is no past, there is no future. It's almost like the past and future are irrelevant. Yeah. Who you present yourself, what your ideas are, and who you are now is it. You don't have to show that character arc development over time because that time doesn't exist. We're stuck in this hypnotic illusion of perpetual nowness.
Well, see, I don't necessarily see that as a negative. I try my best to live in the now as much as I possibly fucking can, and I found I don't do that as often as I should. In actual fact, I'm constantly thinking about something else. Do you know that kind of way? I don't think that necessarily being head deep in a fucking phone or whatever in some sort of now in terms of information, it's different to where the fuck you are in this fucking moment now. Do you know that kind of way? I'm actually holding this fucking phone in my hand. I'm in this room. Do you know that kind of way? Like there's people over there that live there. That's real. That is actual fucking reality.
Yeah, I think it's this. There's a sense of the mind is such a powerful thing. I once read in a book, and I can't begin to tell you whose book it was because I can't think of it off the top of my head. They said that thinking is just another sense. And that for some reason we have pushed this more than anything else in our development to the point of we developed a neural cortex, and all we can fucking do is thinking, to the point of you identify with your thoughts. You don't even think about yourself other than your thoughts. Yeah. And then the more we get hypnotized into this 21st century world, the more it is just that stimulation, that constant stimulation. So anything that isn't peaking that thought or actually making your mind work seems trivial or wasteful to us, when boredom is actually one of the greatest things that creates creativity. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The loss of boredom, I think, is something that is going to harm humans probably more than our dependence on technology. Because as a kid, even like even when I had like loads of stuff, like you still have a games console, you still have friends going, let's go play football and whatever else. There'd still be times where you get bored beyond belief. And I feel that there's almost something important to us neurologically to be bored, to almost with low power. Do you know what I mean? And it allows the rest of the brain to clear its shit out.
Well, this is just it. I mean, I'm finding that there's so much mental noise now because of this, the exact thing that we're talking about, even for me. Like, can't even remember if I mentioned this on a previous podcast, but my muscle memory reaction on my fingers, I think I did mention this before. It's like before I even know it, I'm opening fucking apps. It's just a pattern.
Yeah, you touch your phone and then that app's open. You're like, oh well, scroll since I'm there. Stop it, thumb! Stop it!
It's already moving, and you know, I find myself being dragged into it. But I was also thinking about something as well, about when you said conspiracy theories. I remember when I started with conspiracy theories, and it was Coast to Coast. Do you ever remember Coast to Coast?
No, you have to refresh my memory.
Do you not remember this? It was a radio show, and it used to have on very alternative, very outlandish in most cases, people that were talking like about spirits and ghost stories and space travel and remote viewing, all this kind of stuff. Oh, she's off. She's fucked off.
She's gone.
Oh, she didn't even say anything. I can't even believe it.
We can edit something in later.
But yeah, and do you don't know who Art Bell is?
No, I don't believe it.
Do you not? Oh no. God! All right. So basically, this is like, I can't remember the frequency that it was out, but I used to go through, I think it was iTunes, and I used to download this, like, I think it was on one weekly basis, maybe just 2 or 3 shows over a weekend or whatever, and it was on a certain radio station called Coast to Coast, and I think it was George Norrie and Art Bell used to have basically anybody outlandish on that was talking about anything semi-ludicrous and crazy. But I used to absolutely fucking adore it because Art Bell never treated anybody like they were a piece of shit. Never.
Yeah.
And not to say that he'd believe them, but he would talk to them so down to earth, you know, that kind of way. And it was just like, well, how would this happen? Way better than I'm doing right now. But he had a concept, a theory of his own self, his own sort of concoction, which was the quickening. And the quickening was that time itself was actually speeding up. And they used to be they used to drag in some sort of, I don't know if it was pseudoscience or if it was actually scientific based, or, you know, some theorized or something like that. But there was the Big Bang, say, is the start point, and that's where everything happened and blew out into this like slow motion or whatever, but it was fast, and it came all the way to this like semi point, like on a sine wave, right? Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like building up, and as it grows, it slows down, but it's mirrored, so it has to have an end point. And so as it goes past the middle point, it speeds up again. And I'm butchering the shit out of that, by the way, even though I'm a fan. But that was the theory, and that was what we were experiencing. So that, you know, when we were going to the seaside or the beach or whatever when you were a kid, it always took fucking ages to get there. It always was like, oh, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Or whatever. But now it's like, boom, it's like an hour and a half down the road, and it's like I blink and I'm there. Do you know that kind of way?
Yeah.
But obviously that's a crock shit. With all due respect to Art Bell and whatnot, it is down to increased mind noise, I find, because it's analogous to, say, then the revs of a car. The faster you go in that car, the more revs you need, the more revs of the engine that are going to keep it going. Do you know what I mean? So then it's
if you want to operate at that speed, you need the engine to go at that speed, the engine being your mind here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that we put in that much. We've spoken of it before about, you said after 6 hours of gaming, shutting your eyelids and still seeing the fucking thing happening. Yeah. So you've got to think of when you see the world, when you interpret it, it's like 1/8,000th of a second. So we don't actually experience life in real time. We have to have that speed interpretation, that period of time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think there must be a mechanism of accelerating that. Even a minute acceleration of that, I think, would be incredibly noticeable to the average human psyche. Do you know what I mean? And I think this is why you have some people that have to operate at that just high end all the time, because that's almost what they've wired their brain to do.
Yeah.
So when they cease doing it, they end up crashing. They have a professional crash from whatever career they were doing or whatever, and they don't know how to live, they don't know how to deal with themselves, because everything was that you were just so in it. Do you know what I mean? And we've all experienced this thing of doing any activity and being so involved within it that then you stop it and you're almost like you can't remember how you made the decisions or what. Yeah. It doesn't quite make sense. It just happened. It occurred.
Yeah, I mean, obviously alcohol is an interesting one when you get absolutely bladdered and walk home, and you don't remember walking home. You don't remember putting keys in the fucking front door. You don't remember how you got into bed. You don't remember actually where you fucking, if it was a positive one and you haven't had any negative effect. But I hear that it's the hypothalamus, is it, that actually drives that sort of automated, oh, I know where I'm going, you don't have to think about anything, just your langers, shut the fuck up.
Well, yeah, I imagine, because alcohol is classified as a neurological retardant. So it slows down the connections between neurons in the brain. So it slows thinking. So again, I've just come up with the idea that almost there's a thought experiment that kind of proves our previous hypothesis, is that when you're drunk, those nights last forever. Do you know what I mean? The slowing of time.
Yeah.
But then if you then think, I can think of times when I used to drink, say, Red Bull and vodka or something like that, and I wouldn't notice the slowing as much, because again, that's still keeping my system operated at a higher level. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then especially if you say mix cocaine and alcohol and you get cocaethylene, it gives you that weird kind of, you're on point, but you've got the slowed down process of alcohol. So the alcohol feels to draw out the evening, but then you've got that just endless chat shit of cocaine. Do you know what I mean? The toilet talk, you're chatting up, you're smashing lines up, just chatting about aliens and God knows what,
I chat enough shit as it is, to be quite honest. But yeah, I fucking hell, I don't know, man. Like it's an interesting one to say the least, because there was a time where, in theory, I could have been classified as being highly depressed, because I was displaying, say, tick box list-esque depression. I was ticking all the boxes, kind of a thing. But I have to say, I wasn't. I'll tell you what. It was a point where I actually didn't know what time was, to a point where I slept when I was sleepy. It didn't matter what time it was, and that sort of drove what I was doing. So I think I was in between jobs. I must have been in between jobs at that point, because like I would just, if I slept for 4 hours and I got up at 3:30, I'd start my day at 3:30. I'd just get up until I was grand, and until I felt a bit more tired, and then I'd just go back to sleep. To a point where, more often than not, I was up at very odd hours, and I didn't really have that much social interaction. So, and I would sleep for extended periods throughout the day, where people were doing their 9 to 5s and stuff like that, and that was interesting. Like, even though I lacked social interaction, I wasn't necessarily unhappy, but I managed, as why I'm telling you this fucking story in a long-winded way, is I managed to lose the concept of time completely, and it didn't bother me. It didn't bother me in the fucking slightest. I can't explain it any further than that. It just felt fine. It felt like an awful lot of weight had actually been lifted off my shoulders, because I wasn't actually responding to the expected demands of obligation. You know what I mean? That is, say, modern day slavery. Do you know what I mean? It's a really boring way of telling that story, but I appreciate it if you haven't fallen asleep and you've stuck with it.
And I thought it was a good personal anecdote, and I thought it touches on something that I suppose a lot of people have experienced at different times is that time is obviously a man-made construct in terms of the way that we interpret it. We've divided the calendar, created the clock, etc. We've interpreted parts of it from nature, obviously, and it's been modified through various systems over time till we are where we are.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you lose that sense of day-to-day structure and you lose that concept of time, you end up with, I suppose it's Einstein's relativity. It's a paradox in a certain way because you're timeless. So in a certain way, then if you're doing something you enjoy, it's over. If you're doing something shit, it takes a week.
All that I came up with really, and after that, and I was thinking about it, was, what is it? Time is relative. Is that what he says?
Yeah.
But I was like, you could extend that then for me. It was like, time is relative, but irrelevant. It's stupid. I know it's stupid. But
no, but what I think that shows is, again, a proof of our hypothesis from before of saying that the more we push into our brain, the more we are, because if you're then engaging with the system every day, you have to know, well, this is from today's paper, this is from today's, you know what I mean? You have to respond to stuff pretty quick because it's only a few hour news cycle. It's only a few hour post. You don't want to be responding to your mates comments 5 hours after the conversation. You're looking like so there's certain etiquette and whatever. So you're constantly on this, and I think that acceleration of the brain causes the relative experience of time to accelerate a lot faster. So I've then had moments where, say, when I take myself off into the woods and I deliberately, like, sometimes I'll go, I'm not going to take a single picture, phone is going off, there's no reason for me to look at anything. The only time I need to know this, I don't even need to know the time. I need to be able to look at the sky and judge how many hours of daylight I've got. How much time have I got to prepare for camp? Do you know what I mean? And that's about it. And you run off the light cycle. You know what I mean? And I think that living off something like that, or even off your own cycle of just your circadian rhythm of when you want to go to sleep and wake, that gives a certain agency back to us. And I think that allows us to slow life down enough that we can then choose how to proceed going forward. And then you can busy it again and speed it up. But by slowing it, you get to choose what you speed up. Do you know what I mean?
Actually, I actually, sorry, I was going off on another thing without acknowledging your point. That was quite rude. No, I agree with you. And now I'm going to move on. No, it is relatable at least. Oh, there's a little bug here on my... Where did you come from? So I haven't been able to do that, obviously, because of COVID, and it is like my favorite place is the woods. I love it. I absolutely love it. And to a point where I watch people going out in the woods in Canada, kind of a thing. Joe Robinette is my favorite. If you haven't actually watched any of his stuff, if you're just looking for something, stream it up to the telly, watch him on YouTube. He's a good guy, really, really pleasant, down to earth, and super appreciates what we've just talked about. That sort of point where he's out in the middle of a lake, and it's utter silence, and it's just him by himself, and he just goes. You can see him just fucking digesting it, and that is something that I want. Obviously, I want to see family and stuff, but I really want that. I want an extended period of chosen solitude, but not in a negative way, just as a refresher, just to kind of go, I'm leaving it there, and part of me really wants to sort of, I don't know if you ever watched Alone or anything like that. Have you seen those things? Have you not? Oh, it's this Discovery show or something like that, where these lads get dropped into not remote, because uninhabited parts of like different areas of the world. One is in Patagonia, one is in Vancouver Island, and there's like bears and wolves and shit, and basically you're dropped in with 8 items, and that is it, nothing else. It's not like Bear Grylls, like where he's demonstrating it, and it's nothing further than a demonstration. He's not really putting himself into any sort of peril. These people are like, basically they have an emergency phone and a flare and whatever they've chosen to bring, and they have to it isn't over a set period. You stay out there until you tap out, and you will see people become themselves and be fear becoming themselves, and make every sort of excuse under the book to bottle it and look after their ego and the whole lot. And you will see occasionally, without spoiling it or anything like that, you will see the occasional sort of master that is just completely accepting of themselves and just can deal with it, and they end up. I'll spoil one bit. So if you're going to watch it, plug your ears for 10 seconds. There's one person in there that was so good that they got bored. They did everything. Built tables. He literally built like a bowling ring, right? Where he had skittles, a bowling alley, and he was like throwing a ball down it and stuff like that. He had food, and he was just, every man around the corner was like struggling or whatever, and he was just going, "This is too easy." Like none of the isolation is even breaking him or nothing. He's just like, I'm just going. That's it. I'm done. Forget the money. I'm gone. And I was like, that guy won. He won.
Yeah, he won.
But it's something that I do want to do. I think not to any extremity, but I'd love to have maybe a week or two somewhere just where, and I come back. You know, see what the fuck happened.
You only really need. Well, it's anything after 2 nights. If you do if you do 2 nights where you don't. So one of the points that I thought was one of my most favorite times that I've done this sort of solitary reset was I literally just. Sorry, there's somebody screaming in my street. Apologies if you can hear that, guys. I picked the river Ewe, I think it is, that goes through York.
Me?
You. And because I wanted a water source, and I was all right, if I've got a water source, I can camp in, I can take in enough of what I need, enough of the supplies. I know my skills, I know what I need to do and what I can do. So it's all right, we'll do this. And yeah, the morning of the second day, having not said a word to myself, having not verbalized for 2 full days, the peace, there's no urgency. There is no urgency at all. Like literally, I woke up and I was in a beautiful woodland, and I cleared the ground so I can keep an eye on tracks. So the first morning I was woke up by a squirrel that was emptying some shit out of a tree, literally just kicking everything out of a fucking tree, just on my tent. Second night I woke up and I found like deer tracks and stuff moving through where I'd cleared the brush and laid the soil so you can actually get imprints. And so yeah, just in the morning, very slowly getting up, rolling a joint, making a coffee, and there's nothing. I need to check my phone. I need to this, and the 1,000 things that scream at you from all directions as soon as you open your eyes. Yeah. You've actually got this true slowing. You can hear your own heartbeat. You can actually feel yourself. Do you know what I mean? So it's not a case of I'm a cold or what. You are so in tune to every fucking thing, man.
No, I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to that an awful lot now, I have to admit.
Yeah.
But you can't go wild camping though. You can in Scotland, I think, but you can't.
You get the 24-hour discretion in Scotland, but down in the UK, again, trespass isn't a criminal offence; it's a civil offence. So you won't get a prison term or anything high end. Yeah. You will literally just get sort of moved on, and as long as you're not being a dickhead, if there's like 40 of you smashing up some ground somewhere, nobody will report you, and even if they do, the cops will be like, pfft.
Yeah, it's still that sort of like.
I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to do.
No, it's not that. It's just like hassle. It's the hassle. I don't mind being wrong. I don't mind being like the cheeky fucker. It's these days. I just don't want to deal with the hassle.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like I just want to be sound. I just want to go out and fucking crack.
As a solo camper, you're very unlikely to get disturbed anyway. Honestly, I have never once been stopped anywhere, and sometimes I've done like. So I'll drive and do an event, and I'll literally just pick a point in the map and go, right, that's exactly halfway. Yeah. Take a left off the motorway and just go find some fucking woods. Yeah. Gather some firewood, do you know what I mean? Make a cup of tea, settle in, you know?
Yeah, see, I want to go fucking on the lakes, man. I want to go kayaking and shit. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, man. The UK is a bit small to go on like the kind of adventure I think you're kind of wanting to. Most of the lakes you'll cover quite quickly.
Wales.
Well, actually, yeah, Wales is a wonderful country.
I'm telling you. Is it... please, if you're Welsh, please forgive my pronunciation of. Is it Betty Coed? Have you ever been there?
No, I have not.
Oh my god, it's so pretty. Like, oh wow, like I'm actually getting hairs on the back of my neck just thinking about it. I did a race there before where, funny enough, it was this quest, which is an adventure race across mountains and stuff like that, and. We had this beautiful summer's day in Wales, and it went through some of the lakes of Snowdonia and stuff, and you had to like kayak around one of the lakes for a kilometre, You have to like cycle 20k up this mountain, then run across the top of the mountain up to the summit and down, and all that kind of stuff. It sounds bananas. People are probably listening to go, what the fuck are you talking about? Running up a mountain? Are you mental? But do you know what it did for me, in actual fact? Because I used to be a very competitive person. That was another thing that I had to sort of drop and had to learn how to get rid of. This is like Maca therapy today. But yeah, so I used to be extremely competitive, like very, very competitive in everything. Not to like a very detrimental thing, but to me, like I still have a drive to push on and stuff like that. But I'm not really competitive even with myself anymore. I just go and do stuff. And the difficulty of doing an extreme sporting event such as Ironman or anything like that, even triathlons, it depends, it's all contextual, but like doing an adventure race, I started off with some semi-ego going, oh, I'm fit, man, I can do this, I'll fucking smash it, right? And your ego drops away dead quick, because by the time you're hitting 40k, 50k, having not been used to it, not knowing how to actually get the nutrition into your body over an extended 2 or 3 hour period of time in mental, sometimes mental weather conditions, and you see someone that you would maybe stereotypically have equivocated to being inferior to you physically, even on a subliminal level. So I literally, please don't judge me for this, it was like, there was a lady that was, I think, in her 50s or whatever, very short, the whole lot. She started beside me on the line. She smashed the shit out of me. I was panting, and she went, hi, how's it going? I was like, oh my God. And whatever, no, it was subliminal mind, I would never have that sort of as an extroverted thing, but it crushed it. Whatever it was like, you need to get rid of this, whatever the shit is, and just concentrate on the fucking race and what you're doing, and don't be worried about the time. I mean, it's hard enough to do the bastard thing. Do you know that kind of way? And when that goes, it's another weight. It's another weight that's gone. And now I actually go, ooh, do you know what? I haven't done one of them in ages, even though they're fucking rock hard. It's a challenge. It's the opposite way of what we were talking about in terms of a refresher. That kind of way. You can do that physically too. And it can be good in certain contexts for your mental health in that regard, just as selective isolation in beautiful nature and whatever. I think I just swallowed a fly. Yeah, I'm waffling again. Do you want to jump in here at any point in time? You do gym though, right?
Yeah, I did gym, and then COVID fucking happened.
But you do yoga.
But I do sort of yoga, and I do a basic route exercise most mornings. It's only sort of 20 push-ups, 20 press-ups, 20 sit-ups, and then like 20 bicycle, and then 20 sort of side crunches, and then just a burst variations of things after I've done sort of a yogic exercise to really loosen the body. Yeah. But I mean, the endorphic release and what we're now discovering to be endogenous cannabinoid reaction, runner's high, that you get from doing physical exercise. There's something that is neurologically rewarding, but I also think it hits the same thing that being in the woods does. So as you said, you're going, oh, fuck, I'm panting, I'm whatever. It allows you to contextualize where you are in your life and go, okay, I'm this age. How should I be reacting to this environment? And then being able to take those steps moving forward to going, okay, maybe I change up a diet. Maybe, okay, I actually go and do a little bit extra each week. And it's just one of those healthy check-ins. So at least I say to everybody, at least once a year, you need to go and fuck yourself up in the woods. I'm sorry to say it in that way, but you do. You need
whatever shape, form.
If you want to do it with drugs or even with drink or whatever else, you need to go to nature, put yourself in a different state of mind, and then really remind yourself of what the hell is happening, who you are. You're an animal in your natural environment. These concrete cages that we've created are not where we're meant to fucking live. It's fear that builds these houses. It isn't our innate nature, you know?
Yeah, it is. Perceived fear from others when it's actually an embedded fear from broken institutions.
Well, exactly that, yeah, because it's not to get too utopian with it, but capitalism in a lot of ways drives scarcity. It drives the poor and rich paradigm. It drives the haves and have-nots. You know what I mean? It then drives people to, I mean, look what the fuck you saw during, was it 2011 riots and people were stealing shoes? It's like, you don't need them. You don't want it. It was a want. And it wasn't even a want. It was just a fuck you to the system. But to show again the way that we're rebelling against all of this, the way that most of our day-to-day habits and the way that we live most days are not natural. And I'm not saying not stop them, but as long as you're aware of what you're doing and you can manage it and measure it.
People know that material, short-term material fucking acquisition is not something that is going to solve to fucking resolve the issues within your soul. Do you know that kind of way? I think that's widely known. I mean, I people would say that to me before internet, man. Do you know that kind of way? So that hasn't changed. Yet we still have this desire to have the latest fashion. There's people queuing outside of clothes shops to get shoes that are 300 quid. It's like, why?
But is that not then?
But it's still there.
But their brains are then they're hijacked. No, because if you buy it in store or at the 12 o'clock launch, you can be wearing it the next morning. Whereas if you've got to order it online, you got to wait a couple of days, and then you can't get the Instagram picture.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, this is what most of this is for. And that's a weaponization of capitalism. So that's our survival instinct that's doing that. I need to post to be seen. I need to be relevant. I need to be funny. I need to be articulate. I need to be intelligent. I need to be all of these things online. We've talked about this, about the different personas you have on different platforms.
Yeah.
All of that is a hijacking of that base neurology, of that base apparatus of the brain that's trying to keep us safe. So going, where do I stand in the community? Because if I'm ostracized by my community, my tribe moves on, I might be left to fend for myself.
Yeah. And
our brains are still on the Serengeti, for lack of a better way of describing it. Do you know what I mean? We are still very primal motherfuckers in a lot of ways. We may have this wonderful languages that we've developed and all of this culture and music and films and poetry and philosophy and all this other shit. But at the end of the day, we're still just fucking animals. And more industry is finding ways to weaponize our animal nature against us. So whether it's the hijacking and weaponization of sex in advertising against us, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or whether it's then the fear of the other, do you know what I mean? To then in nationalist fervor, or whether it's then there's so many other ways in which this is used against us. And like you said before about people knowing that capitalism isn't the root of sort of betterment of the soul. Yeah, it's the root of most religions is that materialism can't buy it. But I feel that while in the past sort of 40, 50 years, the way in which capitalism can really get to you in terms of television, media, phones, high-speed internet, etc., that's all really increased. But there's not really been anything on the spiritual development side. There's actually been like a distrust in most religious organizations, most of them for variously righteous reasons. Mm-hmm. But there's almost like a loss of the counter to that. So then you end up with, there is spiritualism sort of around on the internet, but it becomes so full of pseudoscience and so full of crap that it's not really a defense against this ever bombardment of the system. So you can see why the norm in society is to compare and to compete and to feel inferior.
Yeah. I think that to have any sort of spiritual restoration, or for lack of a better word, development, it needs to start with you looking at yourself. And I'm not necessarily saying that we don't need to go and buy material things or whatever, but it's just about the context of that in relation to where you are mentally and stuff like that, you know, that kind of way. If you're buying nonsense stuff that is usable once or whatever, and you're looking for that makes you happy in the short term, and you're cycling through that over and over and over, chances are you're not going to get much in terms of long-term satisfaction, I guess. But if you were, you know, there's something to be said for some sort of level of consumerism, because
of course, but it's got to be around informed consumers.
Yeah, but of course. But for me particularly, it's about technology, kind of a thing, and what it should have been used for from the off. Like, instead of, we mentioned on a previous podcast with Callie, I think, about the incorrect use of automation. And, you know, for it to take people's jobs in the capitalist sense, that's an abuse of technology, right? That's what that is. That's not like, oh, isn't it great? People don't have to do this. Yeah, it would be great if those people were still employed in their job, and their job was to make sure that was actually happening over a long-term fucking period. So they were, you know, the looking after the automation themselves, and that was their job, and they had so much more release, you know, that kind of way. That is a proper use of technology in my mind anyway. But it's an interesting concept, because I try and look at things now, or gadgets or whatever, and you can get them pretty cheap or whatever, that automate small little things within your house. So that your maintenance of your house, right? Because let's say pre-COVID, when you were working, say if you were working, right, 9-to-5 job or whatever, part of your weekend, or part of your free time is obviously maintaining your house. You know, that kind of way, cleaning, washing the dishes, doing your bed, all of this shit, right? And that obviously detracts from your time as well. So I'm actually, I'm happy to see a level of manufacturing, I guess, that has sort of embraced life hacks, I guess you could name them, but I would like to think of it as sort of a self-automation that you can use to sort of lift further weight from your shoulders. Do you know what I mean?
But yeah, so instantly I'm thinking of a Roomba sort of thing.
It's a good example.
Yeah, so...
But they're expensive. But there are cheaper things than that, say, for instance. But go ahead.
Yeah, but... It's like what we're seeing with the co-option of entheogenic substances in Silicon Valley. So, obviously, I did a documentary with the BBC about this, so I'm going to be careful how I speak to this, because I don't want to make myself a hypocrite. But the hijacking of microdosing substances like LSD and psilocybin to increase productivity in a capitalist society. So, what worries me about then, okay, they automate everything in the house. You've just got more time to be on social media. You've just got more time to be advertised to, more time to be indoctrinated into that system to then be a better consumer.
No, I agree 100%. If that is taken down, there is an element of that with
that's what I think human nature will do with it under the current paradigm, is it not? If we had more time, would we not spend more time with our phones?
I guess there's an argument to that, but I'm talking about just for me personally, and I'm talking about the reason I'm bringing it up is for other people that would share my sort of directional journey, if that makes sense. It's not necessarily to pay the high bucks and get XY Amazon-esque things that are fucking in your house and listening to you and the whole lot. I'm not talking about that. You can, with a small bit of effort, build these things with Arduino. You know, the community does so much, as I was talking about before, open source projects and whatnot. So you can have a version, say, of Alexa that doesn't have any sort of ties to Amazon whatsoever, that is completely in-house, that's completely housed within your network. So whatever you set up at home, it stays there. Nobody's ringing out or whatever, and you can talk to this fucking thing, and you can go, "Grand Jack, do you want to turn on the lights, or do you want to do this, or whatever?" I mean, now here's the thing: I don't have. You can see I still have half a wall here. I don't have many of these things, but by the time I'm saying ready for it, they'll be cheap enough, like kind of a thing. I mean, and you can set an awful lot of this up yourself as well. Do you know, that kind of way? And you can look at your nutrition in the same regard. And I do. I tend to put a small bit of effort into tracking what I eat, and use technology then to actually tell me, like, versus some of the exercise that I'm doing, if I'm eating enough. Now, but I use it as a general thing. It sort of, it helps me. It kind of goes, it's not this like, I'm obsessed with this, I need to hit all of these goals. None of that. It's kind of just a check. It's using that little bit of technology. Go, oh, I haven't had enough protein there, I'll keep an eye on that, and I might make a change 2 weeks down the line or something like that. Like, you know, that kind of way.
Well, yeah, sensible applications of technology.
Yeah, but you have to be aware of that. You can't just go, "Grand, yeah, get the Roomba, get the thing that," I can't remember the fucking name of the thing that controls your heating and your microwave and
well, whatever. That's like, it's conscious consumerism then. So if you're then choosing to buy these things not because it's keeping up with the Joneses, or not because you're physically addicted or mentally addicted, as it were, to the acquisition of the latest thing. Indeed. But if it is a way to truly enhance your life and allow you that better time, or to streamline your time, then by all means, I encourage it. We're going to live in an ever increasingly more technological reality. That is just a matter of fact.
Yeah. There's one thing to add to that, just to add before you get onto it, is yeah, do these things. But I also had the intention of, if I ever get any of them to fruition, I'm going to document it and I'm going to show people how to do it and go, look, you don't have to pay 500 quid for this thing. I've done one for 45. Do you know that kind of way? And look, you control all of this stuff. I'm making this up, right? But that's the concept. And you know, I think an awful lot of people should carry that too. It's like, I could show my neighbor how to do this. Do you know what I mean? And just like sort of spread proper technological fucking application, or at least that mindset around that would be fucking good. What were you going to say?
It's just made me think of another sort of interesting avenue of conversation. Is that we've spoken before the over specialization and specification of information into any one given industry. I apologize to how that may have sounded to any listeners.
Go on.
But what I mean by that is, in the medical field, you end up with people so nuanced in their role that they don't understand how what they do to that body part or that organ affects the rest of the body.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And so the same is then true with modern technology. And then the people that end up developing it, the people that end up in the sort of roles to lead innovation, they all end up from similar sorts of mindsets or walks of life. So they have a similar philosophy and worldview. So the technology they derive and create serves that philosophy. So then you end up with this ever more concentrated thing. Do you know what I mean? Because then the people that are in the bubble that are producing the tech become ever more concentrated themselves, because then as the skills become ever more nuanced. So it used to just be a hacker back in 90s sort of thing. Yeah, if you were a hacker sort of thing, you could do all your shit. Now you've got to be a specialist in each part of computing to be able to operate a whole overview of the system. So if you then learn it through traditional routes, you're going to end up stuck in a specialized area. Do you know what I mean? And I think
there is an element of truth to that. I think what you'll find is an awful lot of the application of that is actually shared. So while you are correct, and there is like, oh, you need to use this bit of software to do this, and you need to use this bit of this, and it only works this way. An awful lot of the general application is the same. So it is a bit of a faff to learn those other bits and pieces. But once you get your head around the initial process of how, say, something like that works, then it's just a case of, okay, I have that idea, plant it over here, and then just figure out what's different. And that's all it is, really. It's
But that's even that sentence, I can imagine, can be quite a turn off to a lot of, I don't want to say technophobes, but you've watched me try and work and develop the Simpa Life as we go and the website and everything else. I think some people are just more adept to it because some of it's a bit more, it's abstract in a lot of ways, if you know what I mean.
It is.
And I think that, so in its nature, the same people who will then be intimidated, myself included, by technology and how to truly delve deep into it, you'll then lose their worldviews. Do you know what I mean? In the creation of even just apps, even software, hardware, a future technological, you know what I mean? Because
I see where you're coming from, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And so that's somehow where it's diversity, just in general.
Yeah.
In technology, because otherwise we just end up with, I mean, look at TikTok. TikTok's so fucking successful, but that's just, what was it? Vine? Do you remember Vine?
Yeah, I do.
That's all. That's all the fucking is. But then it goes off again, and there's minor communities on it that serve a function and whatnot.
Yeah.
But now I expect when I'm walking in public to see anybody under the age of 16 doing some stupid dance to a phone.
Yes. But you see, okay, that is an identifiable aspect, and you're right. But at the same time, you have development of, say, virtual reality and stuff like that, and that is different. That is completely fucking different. You've got sets now that can actually track your fingers. So when you're talking to somebody else in an alternative reality or whatever, and you're making hand gestures or you're pressing buttons or whatever, it doesn't have to be bound by any sort of controller anymore. It's actually
it's physical gestures.
Yeah, well, there's little cameras or whatever, and they spot what you're doing, and it's actually real time, like as if I was doing that, like that. And that's what's out there now. You can imagine what would be out there in about 10, 15 fucking years. Have you seen Ready Player One?
Yeah. That's crazy, man.
That's not that far off.
I can honestly, I can imagine. Yeah,
Some of that technology exists already.
But then, as a counter narrative to that, have you seen
Social Dilemma? No, I haven't.
No, it's not. It's a movie. It's a fucking movie. It stars Bruce Willis, and basically they live. They live in a future
12 Monkeys.
No. It's more modern than that. 12 Monkeys is a fucking awesome movie.
Yeah,
though.
it is amazing.
So yeah, in this film, they live in a future where people can have surrogates, and then more people choose to then live inside these. I think the film is called Surrogates actually, and they live in these sort of avatar style things, and they get to live out in this sort of fantasy world, and then people get so enamored with the fantasy world of the illusion reality that they choose to no longer engage in reality, and reality goes to shit. And that's a genuine fear that I already think we're living through. It's hard for.
How do you know we're not in one at the moment?
Oh, we're really going to swing simulation theory on this right now.
It's a viable thing, man.
It's more than fucking viable. It is more than fucking viable. And I think actually,
you look at the progression of AI technology. Have you seen those Russian bots that there's one that's a secretary and it like moves and shit, and it doesn't actually look that impressive, but it is creepy. And the creepiest thing is, I know that there's better technology than that, and no, they just haven't done it in the same way. They're more interested in making those very fucking scary robots that can climb mountains and jump across. Have you seen these things?
Yeah.
That reassemble when they kick over, they get kicked over, and like they can. I've seen some of the software that's using. So you can see the one with the backpack. And it's like jumping around like a small kangaroo, and it's hopping from box to box, and it's calculating. But then you see it go up a series of how to say it, like cubes or whatever that all have different heights. I was like some sort of Art Deco thing or whatever. It's probably not the right artistic term. But it's also varying heights and whatever. You know, if you ever played Monument Valley, if you're a geek, you'll know what I'm talking about. And you can see it, walks up to it, ding, 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 looks where it's gone, and fucking knows which ones to jump on. And it literally goes, hop, 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 and it's like boing, 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 boing.
Yeah.
Right? And here's the thing. They said that they can send these things up mountains to fucking find lost hikers and that kind of thing. That's the wording of it. That's not the first fuck. I've seen Terminator, guy. I know that.
Well, you've got to think that most of the companies that are involved in the development of modern robotics are in some way also related to the military-industrial complex.
Isn't one of them called Skynet? I swear, one of them's called Skynet.
More than fucking likely. More than fucking likely. Art and life often imitate each other. And we're at a point where I suppose, to go back to simulation theory, I think it gains ever more plausible footing in the cultural zeitgeist as technology progresses, because then people are watching, as you said, and with the quickening is what we alluded to before, like people's this feeling of everything is just accelerating and we're just at the precipice of this Star Trek future. Do you know what I mean? That all of this can, and again, not to be too much negative about it at all, but we've got to worry about who applies this technology, what they're programming to do, and what their philosophies and worldview is. Because, I mean, you've got to remember the founding fathers in America that signed the Declaration of Independence, and they wrote that for all men to be free, except for slaves, except for women, except for anybody that wasn't a landowning white man.
Yeah.
Did you know what I mean? But they could not see their limitations. They couldn't see it because it was so culturally systemic. Do you know what I mean? They couldn't see what's racism. What's gender equality? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? They couldn't. It's like explaining water to a fish. And I feel that the same people who are in charge, they can't understand concepts like wealth and equality. They can't truly grasp what poverty is. When you see a politician or whoever trying to guess at the price of a pint of milk, and you got to think how many millions of people in each of those countries around the world that actually live.
Oh, dude, you've seen an awful lot of them fucking dickheads on Twitter and stuff like that putting out posts going, you can get eggs for 14p, and then you can you've seen this, and you know what I'm talking about? All right, so there's these like rogue tweets that were sort of right-wing-esque, I guess. They were trying to make a point that, poverty was a choice, And you know what I mean? To make it sort of very general, it was sort of pointing out that you could feed yourself for 60 quid a week. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like all of these like old white dudes, of course, or like old I don't know, fucking paintings of people that looked like they had something to do with the empire accounts, were basically putting up these examples of like bland spaghetti that had like eggs in it and all. It's like just super bland shit, and they go, oh, you can feed yourself.
That's enough nutrition, that'll do.
Yeah, but you know, but that wasn't even taken into account. That was the point. It was like no bills were taken into account. No fucking, you know what I mean? There was so much left out, and that was a surface level argument that they based their sort of core beliefs around. Do you know, that kind of way? And it's fucked up. It's completely fucked up.
I think a lot of that is all parties are reciprocal victims of the system. Do you know what I mean? So the people on that side that are then, or the people that are espousing those ideologies that are then just saying, what do you mean poverty? How is the poverty if you do this, this, and this? Yeah, exactly that. They can't empathize in a real sense of what it then means. So I saw over the summer quite a lot of stuff on Facebook of people sharing memes of stuff of going, basically, it was a lot of sort of Karen bullying, if you were, going, fuck you, Karen, you can feed your family. If you've got Sky, if you've got a mobile phone, if you've got blah, 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 whatever, you should be able to afford to feed your kids. And it didn't take into consideration. I mean, there was several million alone this year just dropped into poverty. They didn't choose to do it. They were living a good middle-class lifestyle. They were following the fucking rules. They abided by everything. They paid taxes. They maybe even broke their own morals, but made sure that they stayed legal to do so. Do you know what I mean? And played the game. And then all of a sudden, the rug's pulled from underneath them. And then they're facing this same rhetoric. Often, those same people are the same people who espouse the same thing as well. So they'll have been the people that sat and watched Benefit Street and sat around going, rah, and enjoying this fucking poverty porn. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's an awful lot of that. I fucking absolutely despise it. And it's obviously becoming more and more frequent, the more immediate, or because as the quickening progresses.
But again, it's happening amongst the people who are potential at this. So those same people, I've seen this time and time again when we're talking about, I mean, I use the hashtag eat the rich quite a lot. And again, what I mean by that is I'm not talking about people that are on fucking, you made 100, not people on like 100 grand, 150 grand or whatever. I'm on about the people that in the first 2 days of the year make more than their entire staff will make combined over the entirety of that year.
Yeah.
I mean, the people, the uber rich, the people that we've seen add over $1 trillion to their personal wealth during fucking COVID this year.
Yep.
That's what we true. And these same people who are literally only just above the poverty line are defending those billionaires while demonizing the very same people they could be joining through one stroke of an economic pen. I mean, fuck, you think things have been bad already? Not to get put a downer on it, but damn, the start of 2021 is going to suck.
I've said that.
The first quarter of next year, industry is
Buckle the fuck up. Buckle the fuck up. Seriously. Fuck me.
So hopefully this then sends a wave of empathy through culture and people just going, you know what? It doesn't fucking matter.
Just to sort of bring it into cannabis a small bit, because we haven't really been talking about it that much.
Oh yeah, we haven't spoken of the sacred plant.
No, but I'll tell you something, like, no deal is going to happen, it looks like, by tonight. Is it over? Is it over?
I haven't read the news, I don't know. It might be over.
It's over. It doesn't look fucking likely. Funnily enough, I can't remember. What was I going to say? What was I talking about? I've just completely mind-fucked myself.
No deal's going to happen. 2021's going to get worse.
Yeah, so like it's just going to... They're going to have to lean on cannabis, man. Like, if you think about it, it's like there is... we've got so much fucking taxation to do. We're so far fucked in the bank, and now we have no fucking... Well... arguable support. This isn't a pro or anti-EU point. It's like all of this has come together, COVID and this, and they're not ready. They're fucking not, and they've got a big fucking hole to dig themselves out of. And
it's
cannabis is holding the dollars, bro. Do you know what I mean?
I think if you look at it a sense of, so we've gone from having a trade deal with the largest trade bloc that then by extension gives us access to the rest of the world. again, anything I'll caveat now by saying this isn't a pro or anti-Brexit stance in anything that I'm going to say. I'm just going to say that events have come to fruition from next year. Yeah, we're going to be in a very difficult isolationist position because we're not going to have the same deals. We're not going to be able to operate the same industries. Most of banking is going to get up and fucking leave in January. Car manufacturing is already on the fucking way. The deals that we've done for national investment and infrastructure are not going to work out because they're not going to hold, because the economics of that won't make sense anymore, because we're going to have to buy either fucking expertise, we're going to have to buy in materials, we're going to have to buy skilled staff to do whatever projects. And a lot of that is going to come from Europe or other places where now the tariffs are going to be different. So we're not going to have the budgets to do these things. We could have a true national infrastructure based on a renewable resource-based economy in the UK. We could do it. Even under modern capitalism, it could still prevail. If we went on a mass program of growing cannabis from fucking every corner of this country, we could produce and then export and strike the deals. If we became a world leader in cannabis applied technologies like cannabis-based supercapacitors, cannabis polymers, ethanol, etc., all of these things, and we went for research development and we opened up all the universities to it, we could become a world leader. The world would bang our door down for access to these technologies.
Yes. Tweak it slightly. Fuck off being a world leader. Sort the fucking country out. Then be fucking sound and show the other countries what you fucking done. Don't charge them for it. Do you know what I mean? No. Maintain your fucking national self-sufficiency. I'm telling you something. We'll see so much fucking positive social progression.
Yeah, we've spoken this a few times of the idea of a nationalized cannabis system. So the healthcare system would grow and produce its own and seek all of the profits from that. So it would be able to directly create medications and treat patients in hospital. And it would also be able to deal with outpatients through prescription and everything else by supplying. So it would then make the profits on that, which then be reinvested to ensure that the latest technology and everything was applied, so that the National Health Service would always be superior to private, because it would always have consecutive insular investment. Then you could then have farming, for example. Farming is going to be one of the hardest industries hit by Brexit. So we're already seeing a massive shift from farmers growing animal agriculture, because there's a huge shift in the global consciousness around vegan and vegetarianism. So that is an inevitable tide. That is changing. It isn't going back. So if we could then create a subsidized system where we incentivize these farmers, we educate them and train them, then by giving the people that we've given criminal records CVs to go and work on these farms and give them an expertise of, oh, mate, we can grow 10,000 plants on AOEI. Get everybody linked up, get that going. Then you use all the universities for your research and development. Manchester University created graphene. Then a Canadian scientist discovered hemp graphene almost by accident. And we should have been the ones to discover that. We should be the ones producing this. We were told as a part of a northern powerhouse in the UK that we would have the pinnacle of graphene. And to be fair to them, we kind of do. We have some good shit going down with different companies, but not anything controlled on the national level. And then it's private stuff, but it's still small potatoes in terms of the investment. It's just not there.
Yeah, it was rhetorical enough.
All right, sorry.
I was being a cheeky fucker.
Yeah, but then you look at, say, things like investment in the national service, into the armed services. We don't then need to go to war to secure resources if we're producing enough ethanol at home. So the ethanol that we can produce from cannabis is 5 times cleaner than petroleum. It also works within the modern adaptive systems of cars that we have now. Very, very little tweaking would need to be done to run this.
Yeah, doesn't it have a better efficacy than lithium ion as well?
In terms of, as a supercapacitor battery, exactly that. So for energy storage, yeah, it works better than lithium cell batteries, which is what companies like Tesla and that are accused of having child slave mines in places like the Congo and that, digging up these minerals that are, again, they're finite. They are truly, truly finite. We're not going to be able to replicate this. And yeah, there's investment in whatever around other technologies, but again, no one is seriously looking at cannabis supercapacitor batteries, and again, even cannabis supercapacitors in general, because then you can create quantum computing from this as well. Quantum computing, then that's the next level of then the internet and of digital life.
I reckon you could create an entire smartphone from scratch if we had the access to the technology.
Well, yeah, if the patents weren't a thing and etc., then yeah, and this is why I think a nationalized thing would work, because you could then create an open source. So a private industry would be allowed to, but they wouldn't then be able to patent the technologies that are held by the government. Do you know what I mean? So then even the individual could adapt it. And then if the individual then showed that it worked, they'd take it to the government and boom. I know that's an idealized version of the world. I know that's not where we are right now. But I truly believe that, doing something, and we haven't even spoken of it as a recreational substance, of people then choosing to consume it just because they want to fucking consume it. The billions that would generate in tax, the billions that would be saved from the NHS from having to fucking deal with, frankly, a hell of a lot of psychiatric disorders, even health disorders as well, because we've discovered that exogenous consumption of cannabinoids helps regulate your internal system at the point of it can help you reverse diabetes. Do you know what I mean? It can help speed up metabolism. It helps regulate so many other smaller systems within the body that it can negate a great deal of the expenditure, both in terms of wealth and physical health, of engaging in the current pharmaceutical model of modern healthcare.
Just to make it super simple, if you eat more regularly, if you sleep more consistently, and you're happier more of the time, then chances are your outlook on life will be a little bit more rosy than others.
Yeah.
You don't really have to sauce it up any more than that, do you?
As we've discovered and we talked about before about runner's high. So that's an exogenous activity, an external activity you can engage with the body that then produces endogenous cannabinoids. Nobody's really doing the research from what I've seen so far, but I can almost guarantee you that the same is then true of sleep and other things, that other activities, other base requirements that we engage in help produce endogenously these cannabinoids.
Yeah.
If we can then find out what these activities are, we can then biohack ourselves effectively. We can then recognize that, I'm in a difficult position. And rather than not even having to consume cannabis in that sense, but then being able to engage in an activity or a series of activities, or do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
So it's even like breathing techniques and all sorts of shit then help.
Sorry.
It's going to be lush for someone who's got this on full volume in the headphones. Just like,
yeah. Jesus. We've hit an awful lot of fucking notes on here tonight, I think.
Yeah, this has been a good little podcast. I'm again gutted that we didn't get the conversation recorded with Fiona. To our listeners, we will be having her again very soon as a future guest. It's going to get a bit funny around Christmas, so we're going to be stacking a lot of recordings over the coming week or two to ensure that we've got everything for Christmas and New Year. But things are going well. I've enjoyed this.
And as you can tell, like we've brushed on a couple of different topics like homosexuality and personal progression, and that kind of
fear of the Terminators.
The fear of the Terminators, yeah, exactly. So I'd love to go into further detail with anybody that is willing to speak to me about that, and I'm sure you share the same group.
Yeah, man. If you've enjoyed this has been kind of similar to the 0.5 episode, although that was more of an introduction. This has just been us being us, guys. You've obviously had a few episodes already to get used to us engaging with guests, but we'll be doing this periodically from time to time, just to sort of touch base and to give you guys more of an idea and a look into us as presenters, really. Yeah.
So just be sound. That's all. Just be sound.
Just be sound. Come in for a hug.
That's it, yeah. All right, so
it's beautiful. We shall leave it at that. Thank you very much, as always, folks. If you've made it all the way through, we applaud you. Thank you very much. We have updated the simpalife.com, so you can now find all of the podcasts available there. The video links are also available there. If you've enjoyed this, as always, please do check out our Patreon, patreon.com/thesimpalife. For anything from £3 to, I think, 30 for £40, I think, something like that. You can help support the show and the development of this project. As always, check us out on social media, everything at The Simpa Life. I have been Simpa Carter. He has been Maca MC. Thank you very much, folks.
Have a good night. See you soon.